My name is Jill Coyle, and welcome to another episode of No One Dies from Divorce, where we talk the nitty-gritty aspects of divorce and help each other come through this not only surviving, but thriving. I'm a divorce attorney, and I'm interviewing other experts and people just like you who are going through or have been through a divorce, so you can have the latest and greatest information on all things before, during, and after divorce. Let's dive in. All right, welcome to another episode of No One Dies from Divorce. I am excited to be here. I have a very special guest, guys. His name is Jason Hewlett, and he's right there on my screen, live and for real. Hi, Jason. Welcome to the show.
Well, hello. Wonderful to be with you.
Thank you so much. So just a little backstory of how I know Jason. Actually, we don't really know each other. I have seen him perform and MC quite a few times because he has led several Roots Tech conferences that I have been a part of or watched because my sister is in charge of Roots Tech and that's part of her job. And so I knew who Jason was. I had seen him. I knew what he was doing. And I was, kind of put myself out there and asked my sister if she'd make the introduction. And that's how we came to be. And now, Jason, I read your book and I'm going to tell everybody a little bit about you. Because if you don't know who Jason is, you should. And let me just tell our listeners a little bit. So he's delivered thousands of presentations over 2 decades. He is the only speaker in the world teaching leadership in a performance of uncanny musical and comedy impressions, utilizing the legends of stage. The Promise is a keynote speech that feels like a show with proven processes and immediately implementable takeaways to transform your business and leadership skills. Jason is the author of the Facebook post entitled, "I Saw My Wife at Target Today," which is funny. If you haven't seen it, go do it, which has been seen by more than 100 million people. A recent and one of the youngest inductees in the prestigious Speaker Hall of Fame. His talks inspire leadership from the perspective of a promise while giving attendees an engaging, entertaining, and educational experience all in one. That's Jason Hewlett, guys. Woo! I'm so excited to hear
Whoa. What an intro. Thank you, Jill Coyle. Now it's your turn. She is the amazing podcast host of No One Dies from Divorce.
You know, it's funny. Jason, so I called our podcast, I wanted to title it The Promise to One versus No One Dies from Divorce. And people might be hearing that and they're like, what? How is that even like comparable? But if you've read my book, go read The Promise. And if you've read The Promise to One, go read No One Dies from Divorce. Because I feel like in such different circumstances, we're saying something that, I guess we're saying the same thing, Jason. And here's his book, The Promise to One. I wanted to read this, and so everybody can hear this. Is the greatest joy and fulfillment are within your reach, but they require an enduring promise to the one, someone you might not expect. It's not your boss, your spouse, your children, or others. No, the ultimate commitment is the promise you make to yourself to discover your purpose and gifts and share them with the world. I just got chills, Jason. This is what I know. I'm talking a lot, and I'm gonna let Jason talk because he's so amazing. But one of the things is when I've listened to you speak, you are funny and engaging, and you are, you were emceeing this event, so you weren't specifically doing the keynote of The Promise, but you were just absolutely intriguing, and I fell in love with what you are doing. So then to get to know you a little bit better and say, oh my gosh, he's come up with something that is so important and so vital to us as human beings. I was like, anyways, I love you. So Jason, thank you. And now I'm going to let you speak because I really want to know, like, how did you come to this? How did you decide that this is what you wanted to share and you decided to go on this journey of finding that and teaching people that?
These are all great questions, and I'm completely flattered that you would, first of all, say that you enjoyed my presentations at Roots Tech, because yes, my role was different than normal. Normally I am a keynote speaker, either the closer, the opener, mostly the closer, but to be the MC is always interesting because I get to be the common thread throughout the event that keeps things rolling and fun and engaging and so forth. And so I appreciate that you know my work there. And of course, love Jen. She's amazing. She runs that event like clockwork. She's so great. And, you know, with my journey, I started as an entertainer, and I consider myself an entertainer for my whole life, of course, but eventually came to this place where I said, I want to be somebody who entertains and teaches within the entertainment and helps people to understand their own life gifts, their promises for themselves to share with the world, because we all have it. And so I appreciate so much that you would actually get this book and you would read the book. I can't tell you how many podcasts I have been on where they're like, can't wait to have you on, man. And then they never do any research about me. And that's okay. That's just how it is. But they don't read the book. They don't know what's going on. So I love that we have this connection. And I'm so excited to read your book as well, just so you know, because as I've listened to the podcast, I'm going, we are saying a lot of the same stuff. And I did wonder when you asked, would you come on this podcast? How does that apply? And so I also had that question for myself, because yes, the promise is not to anyone else but yourself. And the promise to the one, when the one is you, is the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what is my promise to myself every single day? What am I going to do for me so that I can come 100% for my family, for the person I love, for the people I work with, and who I'm performing in front of? Everybody's a performer. And so I came through this journey of being an entertainer, performer, doing impressions and comedy, which maybe we could throw some of that in here today if we want. But coming to the place of saying, I am performing in voices of legends that have figured out their signature moves. What is my signature move? What is it that makes me unique? What would someone do if they were asked to impersonate me? And that led me on this path of questioning, do I know my own voice? Can I help others discover theirs? And is there a process behind this to creating and expanding upon our gifts, our talents, and then living our promise every single day? And so that's how this came about. And I think because, Jill, I'm the ultimate promise breaker to myself.
Right.
I make promises and I keep the craziest promises to everyone else. No one pretty much ever is let down by Jason Hewlett. But Jason lets Jason down all the time.
Yes.
That's why I'm the perfect person to write this book, because I share with you all kinds of garbage. That's like, are you kidding me? People, like when my wife read it, she's like, you're actually going to share that you did that? And I'm like, I think it's important so that people know I'm not just some guy on a mountain saying, look at me. Instead, I'm saying, look how stupid I am, but here's the path to do it for yourself.
And that's why the book I related to so much when I read it, because I put so much of my personal story in my book as well. And a lot of people looked at me too, Jason, and said, what are you doing? You're putting your personal life right here on these pages. And I said, you know why? It's because just like that how can you tell and teach others how to be, better if you aren't taking your own lessons and then showing how you are using those to make you better. I'm all about action. When I read books and, they tell you all about, whatever, but then at the end of the day, they don't have action items of how to actually deal with it. I'm like, why did I just read that book? I didn't get anything from that other than hearing your entertaining story. And so I related to that, to your book. And one of the things that your endorser was Steve Young. And he said this, what is your promise to yourself? The promise to one will inspire you to fulfill your life's purpose. And the reason why I love that is because divorce, a lot of times we get into our marriages and we just stop caring or thinking about ourselves. We are innately human beings that want to help other people. And therefore we continually serve the other, making, just like you said, Jason's making promises to others and is very good at being committed, but then we're never fulfilling the promises we make to ourselves. And so we get stuck in this rut of where we're going down and we're miserable. And we keep just looking at the other person thinking, why are you not fixing this? Why are you not the one that's going to make me happy? And what we break it all down is exactly what I'm saying when me and Jason are saying the same thing. It's because we are not fulfilling what we need. We are not becoming that full person. We are not keeping the promises to ourselves, which is now my new mantra because it makes so much sense to ourselves to then be this person that is able to show up to everybody else. And boom, there it is. That's why the promises and no one dies from divorce is exactly what we need to be doing is that today's the day that we're going to start looking inward and doing what we deserve to be worthy, to be fulfilled. And so anyways, I love that. Jason, I do want to get a little bit raw with you a little bit because I want you to talk about your background, which you talk about this in your book. And, I mean, just talk about your story about how your dream and how you almost were there to achieve your dream and what happened. I won't ruin it, but I want to talk a little bit about it.
So thank you, Jill. That's quite the endorsement from you as well. And I appreciate it very much. So my story begins where I wanted to become a Las Vegas headliner entertainer. And that was where I was headed. $100 million contract is what I was after, the whole shebang. Even not being a celebrity, it was possible because of a fellow named Danny Gans, who was a Christian, family-friendly, amazing impressionist singer, comedian, all these great things. And I watched him, and he was like Sammy Davis Jr. And I said, I want to be like that guy. And so I put together a show that was pretty darn spot on like him, but my own variation. So it was impression after impression, 100 different voices in a show. I would do Louis Armstrong, yes, the stars are blue, clouds are white. And then I'd jump into the Chipmunks. And then I'm dancing like Michael Jackson. And everybody's like, whoa, this is crazy amazing. And I got booked for a lot of events, and I was doing very well. And after 3 years of doing that full time, had just been married, we were going on this journey together, and I connected with somebody who was one of the largest casino billionaire developers in all of Las Vegas. And he said, hey, I brought Danny Gans, your hero, to Las Vegas. Why don't you come and be a part of what we're doing? And I was like, really? Wow. I mean, it was so early, Jill. I wasn't 25 years old. It's crazy. And imagine for your listeners, your viewers, what if your dream came true and you were 25 years old? What if your ultimate end game was exactly what you wanted was all of a sudden right in front of you? Yeah. Because that's what happened. I'm sitting there in a conference room. My wife and I drove our Subaru from Salt Lake City, Utah, 6 hours to Las Vegas. We're sitting with this casino billionaire and all of his lawyers, his managers, the people that would manage and write my show, manage my career from then on. And as they passed me the contract and said, your life's about to change, we're gonna make it so that your performance is perfect and that you look the part and that you sound the part and you say everything that we need you to say. As I started to realize what they were doing is they were grooming me into this person that they needed me to be rather than who I truly am. Because I had made a promise years before, which I share in the book, that I was only going to do family-friendly, G-rated performing for my career. And so that was what I had created, was a show for families. Kids, parents, grandparents, everyone could be there without covering their eyes and being embarrassed. And so as I'm sitting across the table from this casino owner, realizing my dream's about to come true, I just need to sign on the line. You see, I'd made a promise to do everything it took to get there. But when I realized that he needed me to make a promise to them that I would change everything about what I had promised myself I would do in the beginning. And to get to the next level, to get to my highest level of success, I would have to turn my back on the promises I made from my youth, being my beliefs, my foundation, my integrity, and my character. And I tried to talk it through and say, can we negotiate on this and this aspect? I need to write the show. I need to know what I'm going to say, and it'll be the way that I need it to be said. And they told me, no, we need it to be not a family friendly. It needs to be adult friendly. It needs to be the way that we need it to be. We need it to be punchy and funnier and all of these things that I was like, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. And we could not come to agreement. You see, his promise to his audience was different than my promise to myself.
Right.
And I walked away from that. And I've now been blacklisted from Las Vegas as a headliner opportunity for the rest of my life, which is fine with me. But imagine when you're 25 making that as like the beginning of your career, because I thought it was at the top and now all of a sudden I'm shoved to the bottom and now I have to build back up a career. And so it's been quite an interesting journey, but that's where the promise comes from. I didn't realize that it came from this story until years later when I was working with a professional speaking coach, which is cool because now I teach people how to speak and
right.
I do coaching. And she actually said to me, why are you so insistent on everything being so clean and so righteous or whatever this is? And I was like, I don't want it to feel righteous, but I do want it to be family friendly always.
Right.
And here's why. And I told her that story about the Las Vegas casino. And she was like, are you kidding me? You have to share that. I had never shared that story with very many people. So, Jill, that's why you know that story. And your audience might be sitting there thinking, well, how could this guy be so good and turn it away or whatever? At the time, I was really good and I've gotten even better. But you've never heard of me because I turned away a life-changing opportunity for the name of integrity.
Right.
And our harmony is our integrity.
Well, and
so
that's
what we go for.
A lot of people, especially our listeners, could relate to the fact that when we get married, we actually do make a promise. It's a commitment or, a covenant or whatever you want to say. And we actually utter words that are promising to the others that we will support, through sickness and in death until death do us part or otherwise. And I actually write about this in my book because I talk about the history behind those words and how most people, and I have to say most because I'm sure there's the few that actually go into a marriage or a marriage ceremony and maybe still have doubts. But most of us go into a marriage ceremony with the actual intention of fulfilling that promise. And what's interesting about it is now 50% of all marriages in America are failing. And so a lot of people want to turn around and think, did I fail? Or did I fail in, whatever promise or whatever expectation I set on myself or on the other person? And what I want people to hear from this, and we're going to get a little bit into the, what we learned from that promise of you knowing who you are, is that there's a world for you just waiting for your best self. You just have to find it. And guess what? The divorce is not the broken promise. What the divorce is the opportunity for you to figure out what your promise to yourself is. And Jason knew that. Jason, you knew that when you made that commitment and when you went to that meeting, you knew what you needed. And you knew that by walking away from that was going to be one of the hardest decisions you made.
Yeah, you're right, Jill. And that's profound that you say it that way because I knew my promise to myself. I didn't have to make the promise in that moment. I had already made it years ago when I was a kid. And I already knew where I was headed in life and that opportunities would come my way. I never knew I would be turning away a life-changing opportunity that would make me rich and famous. But it was what was meant to be. And Jill, this is actually very interesting. I just realized that the way that I start my speech at every corporate event and every place that I go, I open it with this whole concept around what you just were talking about. Let me just do it for you so you guys you're going to laugh when you hear about how I set up the premise of the promise in a corporate setting even. So I'll say something like, I present to you the promise Norman Vincent Peale said that promises are like crying babies in a theater. They must be taken out at once. And so when it comes to a promise, it's not the same as a goal. A promise is a non-negotiable. It might feel intangible, or it's even 100% accountable. But let me give you an example. If a man and a woman are standing at the altar, and the priest looks at the woman and he says, "Do you promise to be faithful?" And she says, "I do." And the man, he says, "Do you promise to be faithful?" And he says, "Well, I set a goal." And then I say, why set a goal when we can make a promise? Not to say goals aren't important, because of course they are. But if we set a goal and we miss it, we just set another one. But if we make a promise and we break it, that's a one and done. So what are your promises, my friend, compared to the goals that you've made in your life? Goals are particulars, where promises are proclamations. So what do you proclaim in your promise? And Jill, that's funny that you were saying that about those words, because I use that as the perfect way to describe the difference between a goal and a promise.
Yes, I love it. I tell you, because, okay, so I want to read the first paragraph of the preface, because this is another way that I can relate our books, is that, so think back to when you were a child. Did you have dreams that you would do great things, that you were meant for something magnificent, that you would leave for legacy that would be remembered by future generations? These dreams never go away. They're always present, hidden under the noise of the everyday. Sometimes we are gripped with sudden anxiety, a memory of our childhood ambitions that quickly turns to guilt. The shift results from a fear that we will wake up, or already have woken up, to realize that we are living a life we weren't made to. I should have found this actually paragraph in my book. I didn't do it for preparation today, but I talk about this, about how when we become adults and we get into our marriages, we stop daydreaming. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I mean, I was going to marry Prince William. Like, that was it. Like, he's my age. I was like, that was the, and I was going to be this big prolific lawyer, and I had just these amazing dreams. And I remember going to sleep at night, daydreaming about this. And it brought me immense joy. It brought me immense purpose in what I wanted to achieve. And so I talk about in my book, and you've listened to my podcast with my husband, on year 4 of my marriage, my husband said, "I want to divorce you." And I remember sitting there like, how dare you ruin my dream? And it was so hard for me to understand, how can you break this promise? How can you break up the family? When really what he was doing is setting up an opportunity for me to recognize that I had broken the promise to myself. He hadn't stopped me from dreaming. In fact, he's one of the most supportive person of my dreams. But I had stopped myself from recognizing what I needed to fill my cup. And I was like, so when, we went to marriage counseling, and the counselor, the first thing, she looked at me and said, "This is not your husband's problem. This is your problem." I said, "Oh, okay." And then I looked at myself and I thought, oh, you're right. And I set goals. I set promises to myself. And I look at where I am now, 10 years, 11 years after that incident in my life, thinking, wow, what can I teach others so that they don't have to feel or get to that point to recognize that we are number one, and that's not selfish. That's not wrong. And so I love that. Again, that's why I say, Jason, we are on the same understanding of knowing that, and this has become my life mission. It's funny because you are such a prolific speaker. I mean, I'm talking like he gets paid the big bucks, people to hear this thing about the promise. And it's funny because Jason knows this. This is what I want to do. I want to be able to one day go out and speak what I'm talking about. And I still am feeling like, this little bit of insecurity of knowing what exactly I want to say. And when I read the book, The Promise, I was like, oh man, Jason is telling people something that is so important to understanding us and our self-worth. And And I was like, okay, I can do this. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to find it. I'm going to find my talk. Thanks, Jason.
And you can. You're finding it every time you do a podcast. I mean, truly, it's a big risk. I'm sure a lot of your listeners and viewers are like, I could never do a podcast. And that's just how we think until we not just dip our toe in the water, but take a big cannonball into the lake.
Right.
Are we going to go forth and find out that we have incredible gifts, that we have yet to explore all that we're capable of? And that's really what the promise comes down to. When I'm talking about dreams that you had as a kid, I don't know if a lot of people had a dream to become a lawyer. I don't know. Maybe you did, Jill. Were you like, I dream of being a lawyer, or was it, I dream of being a princess? You know, we all have our different dreams, and mine was to be an NBA basketball player.
Yes.
You know, and so we all have our different dreams. But as a kid, finding out that I not only had different dreams, but also goals that I could set, and I don't want to poo-poo the goal thing. Goals are amazing. But goals are the particulars that lead us to the proclamations.
Yes.
And so it is important to set those goals. So if somebody's listening and thinking to themselves, how can I find my purpose? How can I be happier? How can I change the situation I'm in because I'm on the brink of a divorce, let's say? I mean, I'm not a marriage counselor or therapist or anything, but I do know this, that when we make and keep promises to us, we then show up at a much higher level with everyone else. And if we're constantly only keeping promises to everyone else and breaking them to ourselves, then the roots are broken. The foundation is cracked. And that's not to say to go join the circus because you had a dream to be a clown when you were a kid.
Right.
I'm not saying throw caution to the wind. I am, though, encouraging everyone to consider for themselves. Have you identified that which makes you unique? Have you clarified with others that it's awesome? And have you magnified that promise in your life? I call it the Icm process, and identify, clarify, magnify can change the way that you show up for work, that you show up in your relationships, that you keep a promise to your family and to the people you love. And so when I talk about that, that's really the fulfillment of a dream each time, to say, I am getting better. I am growing myself. I am self-assessing, that I have a promise that I made a long time ago to never stop dreaming, to always go for the best that I can be. And if I'm the best that I can be and it's not good enough for somebody else, well, then I'm going to continue to be the best I can be, because that's what makes me happy.
Right. Right. And the best part about this and this process that you've developed is that it doesn't end or stop. So it's not something that, oh, I haven't been on that train for so long that how do I even start? Right? And a lot of times we have to take our tragedies or our trials in life to then reset our button and start again. And so that's the best part about divorce is, hey, what better time to really wipe the slate clean and recognize that, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to become a better person, to make those promises to myself, then to achieve them. And then to really recognize that, you know what, you are worthy, that you deserve happiness. And you know what, just, I would assume that you would say this, is that it's not a perfect cycle that like once you get there, you're like, oh, so I guess going back to a little bit, so you give up your dream career being a Las Vegas, headliner, and now you're blacklisted. You need to call Donny Osmond. Maybe you can, but because I've seen you on stage, and I would pay money to come see you. You are fantastic at what you do, but I wanted, so talk about that. Okay, so now you kept your promise to yourself. Did it turn out really horrible and bad for yourself?
That's funny that you asked, because I don't know if I really shared much of the transitionary challenge in the book, but I just pretty much shared as a chapter that begins the book that really intrigues people, and they go, where's this guy going with this promise thing? So yeah, the real story ends like this. I mean, that was early 2004. And middle of the year, all of a sudden we found somebody who said, I can guarantee you that for $100,000, I can write your show the way you want it. I've helped other artists, and these are the guys, and I met them, and they clarified that this was, a person who did this kind of work. And all I had to do, Jill, was just give my money to this person. While my wife and I were trying to get pregnant with our first child, we've been married for almost 5 years, and then we started to build a house in South Jordan, Utah. Even though we thought Vegas might still be something we could do in like Reno or in Branson,
right,
or in Orlando or in Japan, and so I'm putting this show together with this producer. Jill, turns out I ran into one of the great snakes of all time, took all my money, gave me 7 minutes worth of material I could use. And later I found out that was all material lifted from other performers on the Strip in Las Vegas.
Oh my gosh.
And so the story is pretty gnarly. And then we're building a house after we had a miscarriage. We're building the house and we're like, what's happening? How am I going to make a living? My wife had not been working for a few years. And I just worked and I did what I had to do. And when people like yourself say, I want to become a speaker, I want to do what you do. Well, I had a guy I was listening to yesterday. His name is John Maxwell. He's one of the great speakers in the world. And he said it like this, which is how I'll say it for you. He said, when people come up to me and say, I want to do what you do, I ask them first, are you willing to do what I did?
Yes.
Because they're not. And so I did some crazy stuff in order to become the performer and the speaker I've become. Meaning, like if you said to me, Jason, I want to be a speaker, I would say, Jill, go speak everywhere then. Mm-hmm. I think I told you this on the phone one time. I said, speak everywhere. Go to the Rotary, go to the Girl Scouts, go to the beauty pageants, speak everywhere. Go to the sports teams. And that's what I did. I spoke and I performed everywhere until my career became a career. But you have to be out there. You have to be good. You have to be like Steve Martin said, be so good they can't ignore you.
Yes.
And so that's what I worked on and eventually was able to pay my bills. And people like your sister would see me and say, I should have him at my event because he's clean and he's engaging and he's entertaining and he's actually inspirational too. And then they would bring me in and they'd bring me in year after year after year after year.
Yes.
And that's become my career. So that was the transition. And it's all based on a promise to not give up.
I think that that's a really actually good point too, that, the person is not always what it seems, right? We all know that there's all these facades and you never know what somebody's trial is. I think that Jason, like, you had to go down even harder and really learn some lessons and work hard at, which I would hope would make you so appreciative of what you're doing today. And it lends to the actual, like, I want to listen to you, Jason, because not only are you telling me something, but you actually are living it and you can tell me how you've lived it and how it's helped you. I actually did dream about being a lawyer. So when you said that, I was laughing because when I was young, that's what I was going to be. I wanted to be a lawyer, and my entire career has really just gone like, straight line to that. And my first job, I get out of law school. I'm so excited. I've been dreaming this my entire life, and I get there and my boss ends up being this very, very misogynistic Southern Baptist who just did not like the fact that I was raised in an LDS family and thought that my soul was damned and was very, very demeaning about the roles of women. And anyways, and I remember I got pregnant with my first kid after working for him with several months. I told him on a Friday, and he on a Monday pulled me into his office and let me go. And I remember sitting there like, first of all, I was angry that he didn't let me go on Friday when I told him I was pregnant, because I had a fabulous free vacation in Lake Travis that weekend I had to come back for. I was a little upset about that. But I literally sat there after that and, cried to my husband thinking, I am not meant to do this. I am I am not meant to be an attorney. Maybe I should go back to nursing school. I really had these conversations with my husband, and I remember him being the one that kind of like picked me up and said, stop it. No one is to tell you that you are not good enough or born to do what you were born to do. Go and do what you were born to do. And and here I am, 15 years later, and everybody is like, oh, Jill, you're this big prolific, podcaster and wrote a book and a divorce attorney. But I am absolutely on the understanding that I went through a lot of hardship and trials to get to where I am today. And guess what? To all our listeners, that's okay. In fact, that is the journey that we have to be on, because without the sorrow, without the trials, we then don't understand and recognize the joy and the success and the happiness. And here we are doing our thing.
Jill, that's a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so much about the fact that things don't go well, but you're called to do it. And you just keep going.
Yes.
I mean, I write about it in a chapter called The Calling, and it is all about stepping into the river. Do not go down the tributaries and the little streams off to the side, because we are, I believe, meant for many great things, not necessarily just one, but many great things. And we do know that our overall work is making a great contribution to the world when we're sharing our signature moves, when we've identified, clarified, and magnified our gifts. And that's what you did. And I love that your husband is such a stud that he would force you back into the river after crazy man, boss man was a jerk. And it's so nice to have support like that. In fact, that's how my wife has been for me, because there has been time where I would say, I don't think we're going to get through this. I don't think I can make it. In fact, 2020 for a speaker in particular was a bad year, meaning every single thing on our calendar was gone. And when people are thinking about that, I'd like to ask you, what if you went to work one day and you were fired from your job in March of 2020, and then you had no other way to get any other work because your industry was gone?
Yeah.
That's what that felt like for me. And so what did I do? I mean, I came home and I remember, Jill, I was at the Maverick at the point of the mountain right over there outside of Salt Lake City. And I was getting call after call after call from clients canceling everything on me. And my whole year went from, we're going to go on a vacation in the motorhome across the country. We were planning this cool big trip for the summer, to maybe we need to sell the motorhome to live. Mm-hmm. Maybe we need to sell the house and live in the motorhome. Like stuff that was so foreign to me as a successful entrepreneur for 20 years. It just kicked us right in the face. And I'm so grateful my wife kept saying, this is what you're meant to do. Don't stop. Let's launch the book, even though it's in a pandemic. Let's figure out virtual. And so here we are in my office. I mean, I didn't have the ability to even do a call like we're doing right now. In fact, I can switch the cameras and show you that I have this cool office here and move around. And for the viewers, they don't know what's going, or the viewers know what's going on. The listeners don't. But I figured out virtual, and I did 100 events. But Jill, I did the first 50 for free.
Yeah.
Because I had to prove what I could break in order for it to be right.
Yes.
And the next thing I knew, people were offering me the same amount of money to speak from my house, from this very camera, as they would offer me to fly to Australia and do a presentation. That's pretty cool. But that's the power of going through the breaking point, the refiner's fire.
Yes.
And when you say things like, somebody going through divorce, this is their chance to start over. I agree 100%. How many of my friends have gone through divorce and now all of a sudden they go from chubby, plumpy guy to looks like Chris Hemsworth or something. I mean, they're walking around, they're like, yeah, I've been working out 9 hours a day. Yeah. And I'm always thinking to myself, am I doing all that I should be doing in my life, so that if I were to come to that point, that I would then be able to say I did everything I could in my life to be my best self. And that's it. That's all we can do. We can't expect someone else to fulfill it for us. We must have it within ourselves and give of ourselves, whether it's at the beginning of that happening or after. I have not been through it, so I'm not a professional in that sense.
Yes.
But I can say, keep a promise to yourself. Wake up every day. Bring it. Be your best.
Yes.
Sometimes that changes the minds of the people we're in a relationship with that's not working, and sometimes it drives that greater chasm that you like to talk about, the Grand Canyon, between us.
Yeah.
It can. And so what's your promise to you?
And that's the other thing is that why are we waiting for such big events such as a pandemic or a divorce or this trial to then put ourselves at the challenge of understanding we're strong enough to get through it? If we're working on those day by day, first of all, divorce is going to go down because we're going to recognize that marriage is only successful when you have two people that are fulfilled and happy, that are individually happy, and then the marriage elevates it. But then you're going to have things like an entire year where, nobody could have thought a pandemic could have come like the way it is. And here we are still in it a year and a half. I mean, I never imagined this in my life that I would be experiencing something like that. But why are we waiting for these events to then say, okay, now it's time to make those promises to myself or to reevaluate? If we're doing those now, even in the best of circumstances, when life is good, then when those trials come, we're going to get right back up. It's not going to be that we have to lay there flat on our face for a while and cry it out. And we're going to stand right back up. We're going to, be like, okay, I can do this. I got this. What else? I'm going to pivot. And you said it somewhere in your book about really utilizing this in your life to become a better version of yourself, which is going to help you in every aspect of your life, whether it's friendships or employers or career, so I just think that, Jason, I did want to ask you, so why is it so hard to keep the promises to ourselves?
I believe it's because we're not used to it. And I believe it's because we've had so many people break promises to us that we just figured, why would I be the person that needs to make it and keep the promise? And so it's very similar to those that say, I don't set New Year's resolutions because that's ridiculous. I'm just going to fail anyway. And so it is hard to make and keep promises to ourselves, because think about it this way. If I say I'm not going to eat any sugar, and I just tell myself
I make that promise every Sunday.
Every
okay, Monday,
minutes.
I'm not going to eat. It's so bad. Oh my God.
Right. So you make a promise. I promised myself I'm not going to eat sugar. And it's a Sunday and you're at church and you're just all devoted. And then you get home and there's a cake that the neighbor just brought by, the best chef baker in the neighborhood. And you're like, well, maybe just this one time.
Yes. You're like, tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow.
And promises, that's what happens with promises. That's why there's a whole portion on and an exercise about forgiving ourselves.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean that we just should make a promise, break it, make a promise, break it, make a promise, break it, forgive. But we need to be patient with ourselves. We need to realize we're human. Today, I probably broke a promise to myself by keeping another one to myself. This is how it went. I was traveling all week. I was exhausted. I got home at 9 or 10 last night. I was up till after midnight with the kids and the family and working things out for today. My promise, Jill, every morning is that I wake up just before 5 o'clock. My alarm rarely goes off because I just wake up. And I made a promise to myself to go get on the treadmill and do my hour on the treadmill, fat burn. I'm doing I'm doing keto and I'm intermittent fasting, so I'm really dialed in right now. But I'm just saying I made a promise to do that to myself. But you know what, Jill? I probably should have slept in today to give myself a chance to recover a little bit.
Yeah.
And so even as I'm standing here doing this call with you in this interview, I am exhausted. I'm still giving you my best, but maybe I could have been better had I slept longer. I don't know. But I know I got up after 4 hours of sleep. I did an hour on the treadmill. I did my weights. I haven't eaten a meal yet today. I'm going to in a little bit, but I'm keeping promises that are actually, I should have probably slept and then probably should have had breakfast. And so it's interesting how this play on what are the promises that we need to make and keep to ourselves. It's really about the right promises.
Yeah.
And for me, it was so strong that I said, I need to just keep going with my commitment of working out, not eating the sugar, eating right. I'm going to sacrifice the sleep today. And guess what? Tonight, I'm probably going to go to bed at 8:00.
Yes. And that's okay. That's okay. I wanted to end this so what would be your key tips to keeping promises to ourselves? I love that you said forgiveness. I mean, obviously we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace, but what would you say are the biggest tips you could give us?
Well, I think I need to reach into my bag here. And I talk extensively about journaling in the book. In fact, that's the whole first part of the book.
Yeah.
The importance of having a journal. And if you don't, that's okay. But I'd recommend you start. You see, a journal becomes a very inexpensive therapist. And I believe that we all have things that we could be writing, that we could be self-assessing, that we might be able to say to ourselves, I could be improving that about me. And a lot of the times, Jill, if I've had a problem with my wife, let's say, I will start by writing it in here. And it will always, I've trained my writing to always go to gratitude. And so if I have a problem with something that she's done or said, or something that's happening in our lives, all I have to do is start writing my frustrations out. It's very much like if you ate food poisoning, you do not want to keep it in. You need to throw it up, get it out, and then you can start to recover. That's essentially what a journal's become for me. So I'll write it, I'll talk about it, I'll say what I'm frustrated about it, and then we'll resolve into that sweet space of saying, this is what I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
This is why I appreciate her. This is what I'm grateful for in my life. And so I believe to answer your question, sometimes a promise might need to be scheduled. Sometimes a promise might need to be written down. Other times it may just need an accountability partner. These all may sound like the same things you would need with goals, but they are very similar. But when it comes to a great promise that you've said to yourself, I'm not going to eat sugar. Well, then who could you talk to about that? If you don't want your husband bugging you about it, then what about your kid? I know I have a son who's not had a bite of sugar for 5 years because his goal is to be in the NBA and play basketball. And so as an 8-year-old, he's like, I'm not going to eat sugar ever again. I'm going to be so healthy. And I'm like, whoa, dang, man, you should enjoy some Butterfingers while you can.
Seriously.
But this kid is so devoted. So when I say, Jill, when I go, hey, son, I'm going to do keto. I'm going to do intermittent fasting. I'm going to get up at 5. I'm going to do my workouts. I'm not going to eat sugar. Can we be accountability partners? And all we have to do is just look at each other when there's food. And we just look at each other like, yep, not going to eat it. I appreciate that he's on my team. That helps a lot.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. Jason, you're amazing, but I don't want to end this podcast without people knowing exactly what you do. So I want to give you 5 minutes and I want you to inspire, educate, make us laugh. Do your best bit. Would you mind?
Yeah.
I'm totally putting him on the spot, guys.
That's hilarious. So I think that I don't know how this is going to work for the listeners, but they may have to go to the YouTube channel to watch it because this is absolutely the ultimate way that I can teach how to keep a promise to yourself. You see, when I was a kid, I got on the school bus and someone said I had a big mouth, and they were right. I went, and it was huge. My mouth is, just way too big for my face. And so I kept doing that. I became known as the kid with the big mouth. And eventually at the end of the school day, I got sick of that. And as I went home from school, my mom said, "How was school? Is it great?" I said, "No, they said I'm ugly and I have a big mouth." And she looked at me and she said, "You're not ugly, but you have a big mouth, son. So you just have to live with that." And she said, "What do you do when they say you have a big mouth?" And I said, "I go like this." Ah. And she goes, "Don't do that. Just smile instead." And so I learned early on that if I smiled at people, they would generally smile back. As a 5-year-old kid, hearing that from my mom, I learned that the light that you shine is the light you receive.
Yes.
And that which makes me unique is that I now use this big, giant mouth that makes me different to make a living by singing, by doing impressions, by telling stories and inspiring people. And obviously, I tell the story of finding out that I could do funny things with my voice and my face, that I could do voices like Mickey Mouse and Donald and Goofy, like, "Oh boy, hi everybody, Mickey Mouse here. Oh right, where's Goofy? Oh, where's Mickey? Hi everybody, well, it's Goofy here. Where's Donald?" I became known as the kid that could do all of these voices, and then I became the singer by being able to hear somebody sing and do an impression of it. For example, people like the Bee Gees. "Well, you know I'm singing my high, I'm singing my high, ha, 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 singing my high, I'm singing my high." And I would change the words and people would say, "We love that." So I would pretty much combine Weird Al with Jim Carrey. Is pretty much what it became. And as a singer, an impressionist, someone doing voices and telling them stories that would inspire, I was helping people to identify, clarify, and magnify their signature moves, that which makes them unique. Because I found out mine when I was little with these voices, with my face, that I could move my mouth in a particular way that looks really weird on a phone call or a webinar or a podcast. But I could do all these funny things with my face. Now, Jill, your viewers are enjoying this. The listeners are like, "What's happening?" But I'm wiggling my nose, and I'm the only person in the world that can do that and talk at the same time. Now, if I don't share that with people, then I am breaking my own promise.
Yes.
You see, even though people said that is ugly when I was little,
Oh my gosh.
They laughed
Yes.
every time.
Yeah.
That was more important to me than the ugly. And so are we willing to lean into the positive, or are we going to grab the negative? And when I show my talents and my gifts, I travel around the world and show people these faces. And I say, "Look, you're trying to do it with me, aren't you?" And everybody's like, "How does he do that?" And I say, "Remember, you have talents I don't have, and I have talents you don't want." So remember, your signature moves are what make you stand out in the sit-down world. It's your promise to share it with the world. And when my kids say they want a velociraptor, I'm not going halfway. I'm going all in. I'm opening my eyes. I'm doing a big smile. I'm going, I'm chasing them around the house. It's full commitment. It's 100% present. And that's one of the other ways that we need to live in our marriage, live in divorce, if that's what we're going through, is to consistently be present.
Yes.
To be present with ourselves, with the people we love, with the people we're transitioning with. For those listeners that are going through that right now, how can you still be present in the lives of the people that you have been connected to for so long in a way that they go, "Wow, that's a pretty amazing person." And we can still make that work as long as we keep the promise.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I just absolutely love that. So good. Jason, thank you so much. Again, his book is The Promise to the One. I absolutely enjoyed reading it. It touched my soul in the fact that I am renewed in remembering that I am worthy to make these promises to myself, and that I am worthy to achieve them, because guess what? Only me deserves this, right? Only me. You are worthy. You are worthy of your gifts, your talents, and you are worthy of happiness. Jason, where can people find you? More of you. You can, if you just Google him, he's everywhere. But is there a specific place you would tell people to go?
I'd say jasonhewlett.com. If they can spell Hewlett like Hewlett Packard, that's the one. And I did found a business that was pretty profound over the pandemic called the Promise Institute.
Yes.
So if you just go to promiseinstitute.com, you'll see that my founders and I, it's Heidi Totten, Alan Roberts, and Bud Heaton and I, we're now taking the promise to the world in the sense of coaching, training, helping companies to transform into a promise culture, into promise leadership. Even we're taking people on expeditions to Kenya and helping entrepreneurs over there understand their promise. It's really special.
Oh my
so
gosh.
promiseinstitute.com. You can get the book at Amazon. jasonhewlett.com is the place most people find me. But thank you, Jill.
I love this. My cheeks hurt just from the 5 minutes. I can't stop smiling and laughing. I've been in his shows. And literally you'll leave with your cheeks hurting. You're an absolute delight. Thank you for what you do. I am grateful to call you my friend now. And that is another episode of No One Dies from Divorce, guys. Go check everything out. And remember, my book's on Amazon as well. So pick up both copies. You won't regret it. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, follow, and share. I'd love to hear your questions and feedback. You can contact me at community@jillcoyle.com. See you next time. I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. Any advice given on the podcast is general and shall not be construed as legal advice.